the weather. What we have this morning is we've got 3 speakers who are going to give 10 to 20-minute presentations. Ali Dutton, who's the head of our IT here at SCVO, is going to go first. Then we've got Elliot Stark, who's the CEO of Strive out in East Lothian. He's going to go second. Then we'll probably have about a 10-minute break, just another cup of tea, bit of a loo break. And then Heather, who is the deputy CEO from Lifelink over in Glasgow, is going to go third. So hopefully there should be a flow to what they're talking about. I've planned it all, so there should be a flow. It should all make sense. That plan should become, what's the word, visible to you all as they go through talking. We'll see. We'll see if that's going to work, if it's not. After our 3 speakers have talked, I'm going to spring this on them because I've not asked them. If we could have questions and answers, would that be okay for the 3 of you, just to take some questions about what you're talking about and some of your experiences that you've had? Then probably the second hour, or the second, probably by that point, would be the 40 minutes we've probably got left, or 50 minutes, is we're going to just break out into groups and we're going to do a kind of a retrospective activity that we've stolen from the whole Lean and Agile world. So that's looking at what are we currently doing, what's working, what's kind of working, what's not working, and then what's next, what are we going to do next. So that idea about actually doing a bit of reflection on what are you currently doing with your own CRMs and your own storage. Are you using the cloud? Is it happening? Is it working well? What could you do better? So we're going to do that as well afterwards, just to kind of give it that bit more of a discussion feel, so you've got things that you can discuss with each other, if that's okay. For those of you who don't know, my name's Maddie Stark. I'm what's called a One Digital Development Officer here at SCVO. I am responsible for the whole of the south of Scotland. Makes me sound really grand. So I work with a lot of third sector agencies who are from, so it's kind of Fife, Falkirk, Clack, Stirling, all that, and the south of that. My colleague Ailey is up in the north, so Ailey deals with, she gets all the islands, and I get all the people. So you kind of have to weigh up which is better. You don't really know. She gets lovely beaches. I get Bells Hill. We'll see how it goes. We've also got the fabulous Project Forge. So there's Jack behind us from Project Forge, who's live streaming the event today as well. They are doing that for free, which is great. So thanks very much, Project Forge. That's very kind of them to do that with part of the work that they're doing as well. So I know that we have got people who are tuning in from some of the islands, so that's great. We've got somebody who's tuning in, I think somebody's in Newcastle, I can't quite remember. So we've definitely got people who are watching us, which is really good to have. So I will say to our speakers, watch your language, some of you, just to check, because they're out there. 2 of you in particular, not to mention names at all, just looking at you slightly. So I'll kind of give it a go. So Ali, if you want to kick off, that would be great.
Jack, do I need to plug myself in?
And do I need to unplug myself?
Is that fine? Excellent. Okay. Oh, go out this. Okay. I'm Alistair. As Maddie said, I head up the IT team at SCVO. There are 7 of us, and we provide support for SCVO across its 5 offices. We've also got about 30 organisations that we partner with to provide IT to, and about 200 tenants across our buildings as well that we support. I've been around in SCVO since about 1999, come through doing database work, and then eventually kind of managing the team. So my background is kind of databases and that side of things. So I can talk to you at the end about kind of cloud CRMs and things like that if you want to as well too. So there's a kind of cliched sticker which you've probably seen before, but what I've basically got is I've got 9 kind of things, benefits, things to think about, and then kind of 9 tips associated with those. So the first one is just to make the point that there's not a kind of thing like Skynet or anything like that that's the cloud. It is basically a series of other people's computers. There's not this thing. So what that normally might look like, these are the kind of 3 big providers. So you've got Amazon, who books, they sell anything now. They created the infrastructure to run their business, and what they've done is then kind of opened that up for other people to use. So they were the kind of first people on site offering big cloud infrastructure. Then you've got Microsoft with Azure, which is their kind of cloud infrastructure. And then you've got kind of lately to the party, but growing Google cloud platforms. Now, even if you're using another cloud provider, so if you're using a CRM or something like that, the chances are it's probably running on one of these. It might not be, but it might be. So a lot of the kind of services you think that you're engaging with, underneath it all, the computers, the infrastructure, probably on one of these, and probably on AWS, on Amazon. but it might not, so looking something like this, sorry. So large data centers normally in places like London, in Dublin, a lot of infrastructure in Dublin, Microsoft's big centers in Dublin, Amazon's web services. Frankfurt in Europe is a big place as well too, but they could be kind of anywhere. Sometimes it might look shiny, it might look like a really good web service. It is possible that it's not, and it is possible that it's not running. We had a service that we used a few years ago it was managing our DNS, so all our website addresses, and their data center was in Gloucester, and it was located on a floodplain. And what happened was the rivers breached their banks, and all their services were down for 2 days. So the kind of first reel of these tips was to kind of know where it is, know where your information's sitting. Even if you're engaging with a company, find out where their data is sitting, where it's residing. Is it at one place? Is it at multiple places? If with GDPR coming in May, there's kind of onus on you anyway to kind of know where your data is, know where it's physically sitting, what safeguards are in place. So that was kind of first one. The second benefit really is the kind of flexibility of it. In the old days, back when we started, we would buy a server, it would sit in the cupboard normally. Then eventually we'd buy air conditioned units and all the rest of it, but it would sit in the cupboard. You would buy the software to run it, so you would then buy the licenses for the people to access the server. Then you would buy the service that you were running, so if it was email, you'd maybe buy Exchange. Then you'd buy the client access licenses to do that, and you'd buy 50 of those, and the server would cope with a certain amount. And then you'd buy that, and you'd expect it to last 4 years, maybe 7 years. So you were getting something up front, and that was kind of where you were. You pay for it, so if you decrease, you're still left with this residual thing. And if you suddenly expanded, projects came in, you merged with somebody else, you're looking at kind of either replacing that or growing it. The main benefit with cloud stuff is because it's on demand, you can grow and contract as you want. The only flip side of that, and again, this is something to check too, is just are there contractual tie-ins with the cloud services that you're using? So can you increase freely and can you decrease? A lot of them, so if you're using Office 365 or G Suite and you're not-for-profit and you're lucky enough to get those for free, you maybe don't have to worry about that. Sometimes we take the view that when we're negotiating with account execs for buying software, we will say, if we order over 3 years, what's the discount? And we'll just manage that and do it that way. So check if there's contractual tie-ins, check that you can move it up and down. The next one, the third one, which is to me is the really big benefit of all of this, is the kind of DR, disaster recovery part of it. So if something goes wrong, we've had, luckily they've been nowhere near any equipment or anything, but we have had floods in our buildings. We've had a flood in this building in the very bottom. We've had flood in the Glasgow office and things. We haven't had any fires or anything like that. But if you've got computers, even just standalone computers, or you've got servers and things within your office, if something happens, is that critical? Is that going to destroy everything you do? Is that going to be like basically wipe out what you're doing? Even if you've got backups and you're taking tapes or CDs or drives off site, if there's something happens to all those computers, how are you going to restore that? You've got the backup, but what are you going to do with it? So the main benefit for us with kind of cloud technology is that it's somewhere safe, far better disaster recovery than we could ever provide, as long as it's not built on a floodplain. And that headache, that worry has kind of gone from you. The kind of thing though to think about is and there are other providers available, if you're using cloud services, if something goes wrong with the vendor, so say Microsoft have a problem across a range of their servers, they'll probably restore it for you and they won't charge you. And you probably won't notice it happens, it'll probably just do. If you go in and you do something accidentally to that data, so say you're running a bunch of mailboxes, like for your staff, and somebody goes in and they delete them all. Or if you're running a database and you do an update and it deletes 10,000 records, the vendor might not necessarily cover you for that. They might not. They might have an agreement. Some of them have. So, for example, one of the suppliers we use, they will do that, but they'll charge us $9,000 for that restore. What we do with really, really important stuff is we'll use another cloud service to back up to as well. So it might cost $500 a year, but the risk of how you manage that is offset by the kind of, if something goes wrong, the big, huge amount of money. And then at least you know it's in two places as well too. So our CRM, that lives in London, and the provider we use, it then sits on Amazon Web Services, but it's also updated, backed up to Frankfurt as well too. So I know if something goes wrong, we can restore from that. And it also means that I've got another copy of my data. So if the company went bankrupt or went out, stopped trading or something, I've got that as well. The next great benefit with this is the updates. So beforehand, you maybe with the servers, with the computers, you would have to run updates. The software would be expected to last 4 years. With cloud services, you should be getting constant backups, constant updates to the software you're using. They might be, in the case of Microsoft, they might be almost daily. They might be kind of quarterly backups. Quarterly updates. The thing to think about with those, though, is how are you going to manage that? You're going to constantly get new features. Is if something going to break as a result of backing up? Of updating? Probably not. But how are your users going to cope? Is there going to be a new shiny feature that just suddenly appears that lets them share with a click of a button all of your files seamlessly with partners that have got all your sensitive information on them? Is it going to be a completely new interface that's just going to confuse them? So spending time kind of keeping up and reading what's going to come with those backups is quite important. I keep saying the word backup. With those updates is quite important to keep on top with it. The next one, and I put kind of, is this stuff doesn't always necessarily work out cheaper. You should be moving with this from a kind of capital expenditure model where you buy servers, you buy software, and you expect them to last, let's say, 3, 4, 5 years. With this, you're paying as you use and paying for what you need. It doesn't always work out cheaper. It doesn't always work out that the cloud solutions are cheaper than running something in your office. What it should do is it should work out better, and there should be those business improvements. If they're not, you probably shouldn't be doing it. What I would do is look at the kind of total cost of the ownership of it. So an example is you can get, hopefully, Office 365 free as a not-for-profit, so that's okay. So that's free, but then you're going to have to upgrade the version of Office that you're using on all your computers to get the most of it. Are you going to, and the answer is probably yes, try and train your staff in some way so they can get the most out of it, or your volunteers. And are you going to have to look at something like one of those cloud backups that we looked at? So it might seem cheaper, but they're kind of consider the whole cost of it in its entirety. The next kind of big benefit, I think that's a really, really big one, and particularly like Maddie's team and some of the teams that are out and about a lot, is this collaboration and the ease in which you can, because everything's in the internet, it's dead easy to share information and it's dead easy to work on things. I've got a member of my team who is, for kind of family reasons, he's working out of Ghana for 4 months. That wouldn't have been possible before. It just wouldn't have worked. We would have been on expensive phone calls. He would have maybe had to VPN to access the server and all the rest of it, and it just would have been impossible. We're using a product called Microsoft Teams. There are products like Slack available. There are lots of these collaboration tools that just make it feel that in the same building, the same office. Again, the other thing of that is to develop these, to get the most out of these tools, and they really, really are powerful tools, is that people have kind of got to feel empowered on how to use them. So spending time developing guides, resources, and training people so that they feel confident. We do a lot of our training now, we try and gamify it. So as people do short little modules, which are maybe, or training courses in about an hour or so, we'll award them a badge for doing that. So they can kind of build up their badges for doing all these various things, so cybersecurity, our CRM, and some Office products coming soon. But spending the time, because you're not going to have to worry about the software, moving the time and the effort. Our teams changed radically. We used to be about responding to things as they broke. We'd come in Monday morning, phone system would be down, and we deal with that. Because somebody else is managing that and it's on really hefty infrastructure, we don't really need to worry about that anymore. So we've changed radically in what we do, from people that fix things to people that are business enablers, that are trainers, that spend time talking to people, showing them how to use things. And that's been a big sea change for us. The other benefit is you can work from home and eat healthy food like these people. You can work from anywhere, basically, and it's probably obvious thing, as long as there's an internet connection. With that comes some concerns around security, I suppose, as well, too. Things like, are people accessing sensitive stuff in internet cafes, or are they accessing stuff on trains? If you look at people with laptops on trains, it's amazing what you can see people doing. Again, it's about training people and putting those in place. But I think the one thing for us as well too is it compromising that work-life balance as well, and thinking about that too. And are people suddenly responding to things at crazy hours, just working on stuff? It might be that fits around the family, it might work for them. One of the things that we've done with a few of our things is we've switched them off so they can only be accessed at 9 till 6 at night. So they can't, and that's a security thing as well, stops people accessing outside of hours. So thinking about that. And the other one, this is more a thing to think about than a benefit, but there's two sides to this. The one is it's so easy to create stuff, digital assets, documents, files, all the rest of it. And it's very easy for people to create those in different places. So you could have a bunch of people in your organization, and this happens with us, and it's a challenge, and it's the difference between enabling people and things becoming a problem. So you could have people using Dropbox one day, and then they could think, well, there's this Basecamp. Let's use Basecamp. We'll put all our files in Basecamp. Or let's start using Slack. We'll put all our files in Slack. Let's start using Box.com. And what you're doing is the ease of being able to store information in one place, and then think, all right, that's no good for us anymore. We'll move over to another place. And you've kind of got this digital footprint of all your documents and all your files all over the place, and then quickly no kind of management of it. You don't know where stuff is, the retention policy, all the rest of it. Spending a lot of time thinking about we can do 80 to 20%. So we're doing a SharePoint project with a couple of teams at the moment, and we're going to spend about 80% of the time working with them, drawing out what the retention on the document should be, where it's going to sit, who should be able to access that. Should some of it be shared? Should some of it be super sensitive stuff that nobody should ever see beyond that team? And drawing that and making sure that's robust and that they buy into that and working with them. And then actually 20% of the time we're going to actually spend building it in SharePoint, not very long. So planning out where your documents are, your kind of the structures that you want to use, not just taking your file store from the server, and as quite a few organizations have done, and then just dumping it on the cloud somewhere, actually kind of getting it structured properly and spending that time before you do anything. The next real big benefit is the security of it. And this is the one that we come across. So when I go and talk to people, this is the thing they always throw about. It's not secure, it's on the internet, it's not in the cloud. Well, if I had servers and they were in the cupboard at the back there, say, and you've seen how relatively easy it is to get into this building today, is that safer than a big data center with with guards and fences and all the rest of it and really tight access control? Probably not. Actually having stuff in your office, when you think about it, you think about the physical security and getting in, is probably not going to be as good as can be provided. This is one of the biggest things that comes up when we talk to people and they have committees and things like that. They say, well, it's not secure, anybody can access it. Well, if you've got a server and it can go out to the internet and you've got just doors, basically, it's not going to be. So I think with us, the answer is yes, it's always going to be more secure with a cloud provider than it is with ourselves. But the last and kind of tip with this as well too is that most vendors, they have trust statements, they have detailed information, or they should have as a company. So you should be able to find out what their certification security is, what guarantees. They should have resources around things like GDPR, telling you how they're going to be compliant, where your data is sitting. And if you look for those, they're normally called trust centers within sites. So Microsoft, Google, Salesforce, all these people, they have really good trust websites that you should go on, and they should be easy to understand and be able to get the information. So check those out and check what you're looking for. And that's kind of me, really. There's my stuff, so you can feel free to contact me on any of those, and I will get back to you, but I'll be around too. But that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. If you've got any burning questions, I'm going to ask you just to keep them to the end, and then we'll get all three of them up and you can fire your questions at them all at once. Elliot, can I ask you to come up? Thank you. Now we need to get you plugged in, I think.
Can I get that?
Yeah, yeah.
Turned on?
I think I'm texting the phone. I need to do this, I think.
No, I'm turning that off because it's basically
Hang on a
just going to
second.
shine in my face.
What do you want me to do, Jack?
Oh, is that because of the... Oh,
Yeah.
okay, no bother.
This
The
one?
lines.
Sorry, you're all seeing tech live in action here. Watching it work. That way. Put you in there. There we go.
Okay,
Yep.
all good.
Thank you.
Right, we're tacked up now. Just to make a couple of points first. So I'm Elliot, I'm CEO of Strive. I'm also a board member of SCVO, so that I admit that and get that out there. That's my wife. I know you're all saying, how did a young person like me end up with such an old woman as well? I know you are. I'm the one she was talking about earlier on being a little sweary. So I'm just going to put a damn in right now, and that's all you're getting from me today, I think. We'll see how that goes. So Strive, basically, who I'm CEO of, is what I would call a community backbone or an anchor organisation. We have multiple departments, multiple work streams, but the basis of it would be we work across a well-being brief. We work across arts, environment, outdoor and youth work. We also are what is called a TSI, a third sector interface, which actually is a government construct anyway, but essentially it means organisational development, social enterprise development, volunteer and support, and the relationship for the sector in East Lothian to all the things that sit around IGBs, which is the kind of new thing that tries to kind of bring everything to do with health and well-being and locality together, and the fabled community planning aspect, which I have views on, which I'm quite happy to talk about when I'm not standing in front of the camera. We have, roughly speaking, over the last 5 years, about 45 to 50 staff, and that's quite important with what I'm about to talk about, because trying to take that many people on a journey is quite tricky. We have a very large age spectrum as well. So our youngest staff member currently is 19, and our older staff member is probably, because of WASPy, probably not going to retire when they would like to. So it's quite vast. There's kind of like 50 plus years in between where our staff members sit in terms of when they started working and when they will retire. So we were evolved in 1999. I came on board in 2000. When we started, we had a 30 grand turnover. So that's our kind of history aspect of it. So the digital change that we started to initiate this year actually had a lot to do with what Ali's just talked about on screen behind me. So we were looking at the complications of us having this growing staff team, having to continually update computers, hardware, software, train staff, reintroduce emails, take emails away, get new base units, etc., far less having the kind of whole continual issues that sat with things like updating software continually, having staff having permissions and working through all of those permissions with the company that we worked with in terms of who took the overall looking after of our system. And ultimately, there was a big financial figure sitting on what that actually cost us as a company as well. So we took the decision that we were going to basically go to the cloud, that we weren't going to have this physical server on our own, that we had to continue to pay for, to update, to maintain, and pay for in our own system. And actually through the gathering, which is an SCVO event usually in February every year, so you will get smatterings of placement of products and ideas that are all to do with SCVO, as I'm hoping you would expect me to do as a board member anyway. But at the gathering, we had this brilliant presentation as part of the digital input from Google. Now we could have chosen many different forms, platforms, servers, but we went with Google. So we've chosen Google, we applied to Google, and they said yes. So with Google Not-for-Profits, we were basically allowed this access to G Suite. G Suite is kind of your equivalent to Microsoft Office. It's an online platform. It's not quite as complex as Office, but bearing in mind, having done some research on this in terms of how my team operated Office anyway, they probably used about 10% at max of what it was capable for anyway. So there was an awful lot of it they didn't use, and there was an awful lot of it they didn't understand as well. So actually G Suite's been kind of interesting because one, it's not so complex. Two, in terms of how it operates, it's actually much easier to share open documents across a much wider range of applications as well. So in terms of home working while traveling, it was actually quite easy to access. I should say at this point though, there's another issue here. You need a good internet connection. And if you haven't got one, that's maybe something you want to take into consideration. So 2 weeks ago, for example, we had a complete out. And for about an hour, we had no access to pretty well anything. So in terms of business interruption, there's issues with that. Now I'm pretty sure I've just talked a load of stuff that Maddie didn't want me to talk about. So what I'd want to go down to is kind of picking up on some of the issues about why the change. So I've talked about cost and I've talked about software and hardware. But I would also say there's other issues in that as well. So what we started experiencing as the team expanded was the kind of cumbersome relationship we had to permissions. So about actually letting people even just update their computers. Suddenly we had these kind of new rules and layers, and to be honest, they didn't used to exist. So we always needed someone to actually be available to manage some of those things. So it became a staffing issue for us as well. The other part was about the kind of relationship to the continual updating of software as well, and then having to retrain staff to understand everything that then had been brought into this new system, or the fact that it just changed, or it changed its place on the screen about how you accessed it became an issue too. So in terms of what we did around how did we make this move, we went in through the board first and we talked to the board. We went in through the staff and we talked with the staff, and we also talked to the volunteers who would be working within our IT systems. We looked at the cost, we looked at what the potential issues might be around training. We took external advice, inclusive of Ali sitting over here. And if you really have any issues, you do want to go and talk to him. He has a wealth of experience, and apparently he's less sweary than me, so that's always a bonus. Part of it though was also about looking at the kind of structure of it. What we found basically is that the system that we had actually evolved since about 2000. So you can imagine the state of our server having been updated, I think 4 times since 2000 through different iterations. We had something in the region of maybe a couple of 100 gigabytes of information that we needed to work through, work out whether we still wanted it, worked out what was worth keeping, worked out how to get rid of it, work out how we were going to then take that back over and actually put it into the new Google system as well. And that was complex. So I can't back away from the fact that that takes a lot of time. You have to think very clearly about how you would do that. And there's still always going to be the issue about who has access to it. In the system. One of the things I would say about the changeover, which was really easy for us though, was the email part. Now, we obviously have our own domain, our emails sit off of that, And actually, I found the transition towards essentially making them all Gmail accounts, but they don't look to the outside world as if they're Gmail accounts because we just kept our own domain. That was actually really seamless. And it was a really good experience. And it was one that I was really, really worried about because I basically went in at a weekend and was sitting with a board member who's a lot more techie than me, making sure they worked. And miraculously, they just did. So there's obviously tech fairies that were on our side that day in terms of making that transitional part work. The time frame and the milestones, however, we have not kept to. So the essence of this transformation was meant to be done in September, and it'll more than likely now be done in March next year. And there's some reasons for that. We didn't manage to kind of anticipate how the staff would actually wholly deal with this. So you can have conversations about it, you can organize training, but once you actually get down to it, people don't really like change. So we ended up with 2 systems, which actually put us in a worse position than we were in before we had 2 systems, because people then reverted to the Microsoft system that we had before. And then we had the issue about where they saved things and how we could access documents, because then we had this issue that actually we had some here on this part, which was the cloud. We had some stuff that was still then going back to our server. We had people who were saving on desktops. We were people that were using in applications. And that's part of the journey now we're having to work through to manage, which is the idiosyncrasies of how people want to work on their own as well. So what I would say is that the part about taking people with you, about really analysing what staff training is needed, is massively important, because that's the biggest issues that we faced in terms of doing this change. So I think if we were to start again, I think we would then do a much bigger consultation with the staff, that we would try and find a way of letting the staff utilise the system before we did any change, to make sure that they were either on board with it or were trained, or had just bought into the idea that actually change is okay. The aspect about the digital change in terms of has it been successful, is kind of sitting at a kind of 50-50 point right now. I think it's been successful in terms of cost. So we have saved money. However, time is also money for staff, and we've lost in that respect, because the staff have not actually embraced that change as wholly as I'd hoped. So about half our agency are now sitting in the new system and working with it okay. There is an age relationship to that, and I don't mean to sound ageist there. And the other part of my agency is still in this kind of transitional reversion period, whereby they kind of have this want to still work around the Microsoft systems that we had before, which again goes back to the issues that we have in terms of how we actually access, store, retrieve, backup information generally. So Maddie had also asked me just to kind of make sure that I'd kind of thought about a couple of questions. So I suppose my kind of biggest one that I've got to kind of talk about here is really just the staffing aspect of it. So the board and I sat in a nice ivory tower. We had a really nice idea. We thought this was going to be really fantastic. And then we hit the staff roadblock. And that staff roadblock, I think, would have been something that we should have thought about, that we could have thought about. And if I was giving any advice on this, would be that's the first place to start. Because if you don't, they won't be on board. And if they're not on board, you're not going to make the change. I also wondered if I needed to explain kind of a little bit more about kind of what the platform is but I can leave that for questions at the end. Am I okay for time? What I would finish with, though, is that ultimately the change has been pretty damn positive. Next year will be the real essence of all the savings that we will make. So I no longer have to buy all that software. However, I do still have to buy virus software because you don't have that relationship to virus software only with the cloud. You have it with everything else that interacts and is brought into your system. So that software has to remain. And that actually came from a conversation I'd had with Ali. However, we don't have to buy any new Office software. Most of the apps that we utilize are free. I mean, Ali mentioned some earlier on. Some of the stuff that we now use that actually is very compatible with this would be Appearance, Slack, Basecamp, Trello. There's lots of different things. And actually the benefits of the stuff that sits within the G Suite is they're actually seamlessly interactive with all of those platforms as well, which is not always the case. At home, I'm a bit of an Apple fan. At my workplace, I used to be in Microsoft land, and now we're kind of across the board with G Suite, which means we've now kind of made this compatibility leap into Android world, which actually all sounds really techy, but all it means is actually we've just had an ability to not have issues when we format things and open things and try and share things anymore, so it's actually been very positive. I think I'll leave it there and just say thanks, and I'll talk to you later. Cheers.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. I think we'll probably just take a quick break, if that's okay. There should be fresh coffee next door. I will just go and check. I definitely put it on, but hopefully, I think I'd put 2 pots on. Kyle's just going to have a quick check. And we'll be back. We are, what's the time now? 10:43, so if we come back, can't count, 10 minutes. Just about 10:02, I reckon, if that's okay. So we'll go for 10:02, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you very much. Can I take this off? I think.
Ah, that's fine.
You okay with that?
Which button are you to move forward? That one?
Yep. Put that in there. Stand in the way. Yeah, I'm standing right in the way. Can't see, so it's a secret. Oh, there we go. Thank you very much. We are now just going to go into the second half, and Heather here from LifeLink is going to give you just a presentation on the experience that they've had over in Glasgow. Maybe if you could just say what the service is as well, that would be really, because that's for me is quite the important part as well. But what it is that you do, which I'll not say anything about because it's will be much better if it comes from Heather. So no, agreed. I'll go over this way. I'll leave you to it. Thank you, Heather.
Morning, everyone. My name's Heather Dixon. I'm the Deputy Chief Executive of LifeLink. We are a social enterprise that provides support services to help people cope better with mental health, kind of mild to moderate mental health issues, such as anxiety, stress, depression, etc. We've been around in Glasgow in the kind of central Scotland area for the 25 years. This is our 25th anniversary, and we're kind of a next iteration of what was formerly one of the stress centres in Glasgow. So there was a big stress centre movement, a healthy living centres movement, some of which are still around, some of which have kind of gone to the wire over the years. So our original identity was Royston Stress Centre, and we've moved on throughout the years to expand our services from a community-based stress service to a service that operates across Glasgow. We've got services in Western Bartonshire and Renfrewshire, and as of next week in North Lanarkshire. So we are a people-based service. We're not digital or high-tech in any way, shape or form. And for a variety of reasons, which I'll just go into, we've become more digital than we used to be. One of the things behind us being more digital than we used to be is our Chief Exec, Jackie Taylor, is very engaged with digital, gets involved in a lot of network events with SCVO and a lot of the One Digital work. And that has helped ease the process, I think, within LifeLink of moving towards a more connected estate. So our starting point for what was our journey into getting a new CRM system, which is what I'm going to talk to you about, was the growth of the organisation and contracts and services leading to more complex business information needs. The people that pay us to deliver services, which is generally health boards, local authorities are our main contracting partners, have quite a range of data needs that we as a contractor need to be able to meet. So as the business grew, we found we needed more access to information. Now, you would have thought that would have been fairly easy because we did have a CRM system in place, but I think common to a lot of organisations, that system was something that we had been sold 9 years earlier, for talking sake, thereabouts. And as often happens, you get sold a product that says it'll do everything for you, it'll do everything but wash the dishes. Anything you ask of that company selling that to you, they'll tell you absolutely, absolutely, it'll do that for you. The reality then sinks in that it's not going to do that for you. You have to spend, a fortune in development, a fortune in configuration and changes to the system. And what we ended up with, which I know is common because I used to work with another organisation who had a very similar journey, was a system that had so many sticking plasters and workarounds and things in it that what we found was we were doing massive amounts of data entry into that system and not actually getting back out the business information or the insights that we actually needed. It was one-way data traffic from our point of view because the amount of paperwork that our services generated that had to then get fed into this system and come back out again as some wonderful information for our contractors was just horrendous. We were killing several forests and having a team of people actually entering data. So we're not a huge organisation. We've got a staff of just over 50 just now, and we work with a range of associates, which probably adds about another 16 maybe to 20 people to our workforce. We have some volunteers, and we generally have between 6 and 10 students at one time. So up to 70, maybe 75 people delivering our services at any one time. So while it's not massive, it's not manageable to continue to generate everything on a paper basis. So our decision at that point was then, do we stick with our existing CRM system and get the renewed version of that? It was a server-based system, and the previous speakers have talked about the pros and cons of having server-based systems. But the provider of that system, now it was called ACT, but I think it'd be like Gannett's Life is SwiftPage or something equally random. And at the time we were looking at this, they decided that they were moving to a license situation. So previously we had bought the system and you did occasional updates. It didn't really cost very much, but they were now moving to a cloud-based operation, which was going to be a licensing cost regardless. So that helped help us make the decision about moving to a license-based CRM system that sat in the cloud. And also, I suppose just one of the points here is about the kind of data protection stuff and the looming GDPR regulations that are coming in next year. And we were probably unable to satisfy a lot of those issues with the previous system. So our decision was made. We were going to have a dream project and a digital dream, and we were going to be fantastic. We were going to have data collection and information management that meets our needs, meets our contractors' needs, means we can press a button and see everything that's happening, where everybody is, what they're doing, what they're having for their breakfast. Absolutely, Big Brother state magic. It was going to mirror our business processes, and that was the really important thing, because our previous CRM system didn't mirror anything and actually got in the way of our business processes and the workflows that we use in our day-to-day delivery of our services, which again is about people. It was going to empower our people. And our previous speakers have talked about that, getting staff on board and really involving your staff at the start of any process like this. I can't emphasise enough how important that is. We thought we had, to an extent. Everybody knew we were getting a new system. Everybody knew that's what we were trying to do. Everybody knew the reasons behind it. Some people thought it was a punishment. You know, this is because you don't like what we do. You don't like us. Some people saw the benefit of it. We've got two distinct sides to the business. We've got basically our therapy providers, I suppose. So we've got counsellors, we've got people that do wellbeing workshops and group works, we've got staff that are mentoring young people, we've got staff that are providing kind of support services to people. And formerly, they, by and large, recorded things on paper and then gave it to the magic pixies that were in the office that nobody knew existed. And that's the other side of our business. We've got a business support team, customer service team, who were grinding all this data in and as if by magic and producing reports that they could and doing all that kind of stuff. And so that, although I think we thought we involved our people in the decision to move to a new system, we probably didn't share all the information we needed to share with them, because we weren't just getting a new CRM system, we were having mobile working associated with that, which they already did, but this was going to be, rather than doing your paperwork, it's going to be on a tablet. And that revelation caused untold stress. Our counsellors needed counselling. So the whole thing about keeping your staff on board and informing them and involving them, totally, can't stress it enough. Our dream project was going to increase effectiveness and efficiency. It was going to deliver the business insights that we needed. We were going to have real-time live updates and be always ready. Goodbye paper. You might sense a wee sarcastic tone in my voice there, but it's not that bad actually. So then we got welcome to reality. It's a massive learning curve for the organisation. We don't have a team of in-house IT staff. We have a data reporting administrator whose job is to get the data out and make it look great for our reports, but it's not her job to manage the IT estate. We have a separate support company that do when things grind to a halt, sorting us out. So the in-house resource, if you like, is very limited. Hence, I was the one that had to drive the project for the new CRM, which included an awful lot of getting the board on board, which included not actually having a budget as a starting point, which is quite difficult when you're trying to engage with providers who the first question they ask is, okay, what's your budget? And we had to be quite open and say, We don't know. The only information I had was that the previous system, kind of 8 or 9 years previous, probably cost us in the region of about 25,000 at that time. So we then entered into this relationship with system developers, providers. I still don't actually know what the actual term is, but anyway, IT companies were going to give us this wonderful tool. And came across the language stuff. It's a whole different language. It's like harder than learning Spanish. So, you know, people talk to you, ask you questions about your requirements, about, you know, what's Moscow, you know, is it out of the box, or is it configured, is it customized, what, do you need third-party solutions? And we were just like, oh, I don't know. Don't ask me questions that I don't understand. So there was a lot of getting used to the terminology that people use. There was the acknowledging that once we've spoken to a number of providers, the reality is a system, and most of them will provide what you need if you're going to build it, configure it, do what you need to do to it. The really important thing was actually a relationship with the providers that we were going to go with. And it was really important to get a good match and that they understood our organisation and our level of IT illiteracy across our workforce. And I'm not being rude about our staff saying that, it's just a fact. So it was really important to get a good match, which, you know, I did laugh at one point and say I spent less time deciding who I was going to spend my life with and live with than I did actually worrying about who the IT provider was that was going to give us this amazing system. And then became the making the relationship work, talking each other's language phase, because although we had some support from our existing IT support company in putting together our requirements, when somebody from a developer side of things starts talking to you about those requirements, you realise you actually haven't thought it through to the nth degree. And there was a massive amount of business workflow processing, which we involved staff in. So we involved like people from the business support team, the therapists, etc. So how do you do your daily job, and what does the system need to do to mirror that and to make it easier for you and to make this less painful for you? And like I've mentioned before, our organisational capacity to engage with IT at all varied massively across our user estate, but I don't think we realised just quite how much that was an issue. Like I say, we've got 50 to 70 people that wrote things down in pieces of paper using tick box forms and things they were used to and handed it to somebody. They didn't care what happened after that. They didn't care what we got back out of the system. So that people issue was a real big one for us, and it actually caused us quite a lot of problems once we went live with the system. And I suppose that whole developing technical sympathy, I was speaking to an IT provider the other day who said, oh, you know, it's really good you've got that technical sympathy, so it means you've got a really good relationship with your providers. And I was, well, that's kind of kicked into me. So it's really hard to put yourself in the developer side of things when you've asked for something that is almost impossible. And they're telling you, no, you can't have that, you can have this instead, and it doesn't suit you. So there is an element of developing a bit of technical sympathy throughout this process, and I think we've got there a little bit, but there's still a seam of they're just doing that because they don't want to help us. So that, again, the relationship stuff is difficult. And again, managing costs and budgets, when you didn't have a starting budget and you had to do a bit of looking around to find out what the ballpark budget would be, and then finding out how much development costs, how much additional build stuff costs for your system, that your out of the box price that you look at for your licensing, for instance, for 60 licenses, is just the start. The actual getting the product to the stage that you need it to be, which we were being quite specific. We were saying we want our therapists now to use a tablet to do all their forms. So we use clinical tools that we wanted embedded within the system so that they just tick boxes and tick things in the system, and it all works magically and records all that information. So the budget that we thought when we identified the licensing costs and a bit of development time grew quite substantially, to the point that I think our initial build, get it live cost, ended up in the region of about £46,000. And we then had to buy some additional time, which was about another 6 to 10k, I think. And that doesn't include the licensing. So it has been quite a significant investment for us. Probably more than we anticipated. because you need to then add on the costs of all your handheld devices and data sims and all the things that you need for those, because they're not all working in areas where they can use Wi-Fi. So we go through schools, we can't use the Wi-Fi in there, so we provide services in places that we need to have a good data signal. So was it worth it? Did everything take a bit longer than planned? Yeah, absolutely. I think somebody was talking about they thought they'd be finished by September, maybe next March is realistic. Completely agree with that. You can't underestimate how long these processes take. And if you think, well, it should take me that, at least add that on again. Because actually our original requirements gathering process was probably kicked off maybe about October last year. That led to all the planning workflows and looking at what we needed and the build and configuration versus customization. I didn't even know the two were different. So the time that took to work with the developers, the go live date was mid-February. I did go live in mid-February. We had catastrophic problems after it went live, partly due to the fact that, and this is, I suppose, is about the asking the questions. I think Alistair was talking about earlier on, asking the questions of people and not making any assumptions. Because we were using the mobile app version of, it's Microsoft Dynamics, sorry, I should have said that at some point, is what we're using. Because we use the mobile app version of that, and our developers designed things around our business workflow processes, so forms were all embedded within that and a nice user-friendly interface and all the rest of it. Apparently, even though we're just a wee social enterprise that operates in Glasgow and tries to help people with their mental health and well-being, apparently our use of that app is the heaviest that the Microsoft developer team had seen, which I just find inexplicable. There are companies that have tens of thousands of employees that use these systems, but apparently they generally use the desktop versions of the systems, and the people that use the mobile app version are doing it just for ticking that they've been to an appointment and recording very little data, realistically, so use out-of-the-box functions, whereas it was really developed for us to deliver our business using that. And there's quite a lot of glitches with said app. So that was one of the things that made it really painful during the implementation process, because that caused staff a lot of problems. They had some training on the system, they expected it to work the way they'd been trained, and actually that was the last thing that happened. So we had a period of having to go back to paper and putting things back in again, and it was quite stressful for our teams, I have to say. Are we now sitting here with full implementation and it's wonderful, 8 months after the go live date? No. However, we are much closer to where we need to be. I think most of the pain amongst the user estate and the staff teams is at least minimised. I wouldn't say it's gone completely. We did have to resort to having tablet therapy sessions for our staff. That was basically saying, okay, every Wednesday from 4 till 6, we'll be here, come in, we'll work through case processes with you, we'll do all that kind of stuff with you. And that was quite useful in identifying additional problems and glitches within the system itself. Has it cost more than we intended originally? Well, as I said, we didn't have a budget figure to start with, but if I was to reach for one, I don't think I'd have got to the kind of almost 60,000 point. We were just lucky that we were able to invest that from reserves that we built up as an organisation, but you know, it's a big chunk of money for an organisation. We also, within the budget side of things, were a bit unlucky in that we hit just at the point we agreed to go with Dynamics as a system. Their licensing structure and pricing changed. So we do get third sector, not-for-profit pricing, but our original licensing cost per annum was going to be about 9,500, but because of the way the licensing structure changed and because of the way we use the system, it's now about £14,000 a year. But it is still worth it, I have to say, because actually the savings we make in other parts of the business are offset by that. So big initial build, investment, etc. Licensing cost, which seems, oh, we never had licensing cost before, now we've got an annual cost. But we are making that saving elsewhere, and it's actually meaning that members of staff that were previously attached to computers entering data for us are actually developing the roles and becoming mentors and being trained and doing all the things they always wanted to do but couldn't do because their main role was clerical data admin input. So from a people's perspective, there's been some really good healthy outcomes from that. Was there change management pain? Absolutely. Was there voodoo dolls of the management team in people's desk drawers? Yes, I've got more pinholes in me than a pin cushion. But that's okay. You know, we can live with that and we can learn from our mistakes. Primarily about involving people a bit more and making sure we share all the information with them. And also about doing a bit of practical, this is what your day will change to look like as well. Because most people understand that their job entails the main job function, but there's other bits we all need to do. Everybody's got bits of their jobs they don't want to do. They don't like it, we've all got to do it. But when you're dealing with people that provide therapy services and their focus is purely on the client and their needs and their well-being and helping them in their journey and that's what we want their focus to be on, to be fair. It's really difficult for them to say, well, why do we have to engage with these stupid mobile technologies? You know, why can't we just keep doing paper? Why can't we just keep doing things the way we want to do them? So managing that process with our people. Will we ever get to a point where they say, oh, it's amazing, I'm so glad we're now doing this? Maybe not entirely, but we're much closer. And they can see, they can get instant access to their client records, they can get instant access to previous assessments they've done. So they're starting to see the benefits of that everything at your fingertips approach. Are we proud of what we achieved? Yeah, we are actually. It was painful and costly, but it is making such a huge difference to the information that we've now got at our fingertips, and that helps us make sensible business decisions as opposed to jumping over the abyss into the dark, previously thinking, well, I think we deal with this many people and I think we deliver that many sessions. So it means we're actually able to cost our services far more accurately as well in terms of going for new tenders and contracts. Have we learned things we never would have otherwise about our people? Yep. Their propensity for swearing is really quite good at us. And again, that's okay. We also learned a lot about the level of IT skill within the organisation. We've got a famous quote that somebody called up about their tablet to say, oh, my tablet's not working, I think the bulb needs replaced. And it was just like, I don't even know where to start with that one. So, and also that the magnifying glass didn't work. And it took a couple of minutes to say, what do you mean the magnifying? You know the magnifying glass that should make everything bigger for you, because I'm not very good, I've not got very good eyesight. I was thinking, I don't know what you're talking about. Described the screen. The magnifying glass up in the corner. I was like, the search bar. Got you. That doesn't make anything bigger. So there was quite a lot of interesting conversations. However, was it worth it? And I have to say, hell yeah. Just from learning that much about our people means we were then able to access some Scottish Government funding to get an IT trainer post in-house for a year. And actually, that's not just helping us with the CRM and all the kind of, because we're now moving to doing some digital counselling and online counselling services and web chat and things like that. So that's our next wave of pain. But people will embrace it much more readily now, I think. And there's some people even saying, oh, I want to be involved in the pilot of doing that. So yeah, it was absolutely worth it. And I think we will dive into the digital abyss readily. I've kind of mentioned these already. There's a range of positive outcomes about safer data storage, paperless client services, better insights, and our digital capacity increasing to the point that, you know, not just the management people and the people that drive projects and stuff, but actually the wider staff, give or take maybe 20%. And actually we've reached that 80-20 conundrum now. We're okay with that. You're always going to have a percentage of your team, your workforce, that don't engage with something that you do as a business, and that's okay. But previously it was probably 80-20 in the other direction, now it's 80-20 in the right direction. So yeah, we can now evidence success and trends with confidence, and as I said, it helps us make better business decisions. But it's not a process that I would dive into without an awful lot of thought about things like cost, things about involving your people, things about training your people and making sure you're not introducing something they're really uncomfortable with. We did have some people who had never used a touchscreen mobile phone even, so the concept of a tablet was just like... So the major things to consider, I think, are it will cost more than you think, regardless. It does save you money, ultimately, depending on your business model, I suppose. It will cost more than you planned, so build in a big contingency budget. And actually, the time you spend doing workflows and what I need from my system, you won't get that right first time, no matter how much time you spend on it. Because once you implement it and start putting it into everyday life within your business, you'll realise that what you thought on paper was the process that you needed to follow actually isn't, and you need to then have some cash to go back and do a wee bit of redevelopment. Depending on your provider, you might get a bit of grace with that, but they do eventually get fed up with you saying, oh, you know, we're a charity, we don't really have any more budget. So they'll at some point say, that's great, but you'll stick with the system you've got then. So yeah, I think that's probably an overview of our journey. And a great one it's been. We've all learned a lot. Thanks.
Thank you, Heather, for that very honest overview of how it was. Thank you. So just to kind of, certainly for me, just to sum things up, the key things that I think have come out all three are the need to remember to ask the questions about where the physicality of where is my server, where does it need to be, where should it be, so things like that. Asking what is the service that we're providing, what's our processes, not necessarily the IT processes, but the actual physical process of that end, to use that term, the end-to-end service delivery. And it's all about people, I think, is the key thing. Digital is all about people, getting staff involved, getting people that they work with involved, and that inclusion process. One of the key things that comes out with the work that we do, we're very lucky to work a lot with Skyscanner, and they are a tech company who happen to be in travel. And one of the things that they always say is test, 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 test. You cannot test enough. And this is something that I think we are all starting to do. Within the third sector, we have budgets for 3 months. We have funding for a year. If we're lucky enough, we might get it maybe for 3 years or maybe 5, the Holy Grail. So that ability for us to just go, right, this is working, let's leave it alone. A lot of the stuff that's come out for me is that, do you know what, just because that is kind of ticking along doesn't mean we shouldn't change it. Let's actually take the time and think about what else can we do. Let's change that for the better now. And that short-term investment in pain, time, money, thinking about and asking those questions actually in the long term has got huge benefits. And once you kind of sit there and make that plan and start implementing it, it's that testing it, keep getting feedback. There's an organisation up in I think they're based in Aviemore, Inverness, Paths for All, who introduced Slack. And one of the things that they said was, again, something similar to what you said today, was that they had thought that they had tested it. So they tested it with a small team about introducing this new collaborative communication tool. They then started to roll it out, and they found they still hadn't quite tested it enough. So it is just that, if you, very much as Heather said, you think they're there, but keep going, keep asking the questions. Those are my key things today. Thank you to our 3 speakers. Have you got questions for them? Any insights for them? Is there any light bulbs or any sitting there going, oh, that happened to us, or oh, I'm not going to do that now. I thought I was going to do that, but I'm definitely not going to do that now. Anything from yourselves? Yes, go for it.
What would you think would be best? A board process of getting your board on board? Just, you know.
Who do you want to ask that? So what would be best? Getting your board on board or it coming from the top down?
Yeah.
So who do you want to ask that to first?
Elliot.
Go for it.
For Elliot.
I think you need to have a process where everybody's part of that decision. So we went through, we'll do it through the board first. So it came from our senior management team, it went to the board for ratification, the board went, that seems like a good idea, and then it kind of went back out and to the staff. I think probably in retrospect we should have picked from all aspects of our business, so it should have been management, staff, volunteers, and the board sitting in the room with some kind of options appraisal on where we're at, what options we could go to,
to take it forward rather than a jump. Because we just made a jump. We went, no, that looks good, we'll go for it. And then we got the problems that came with what happened next. But you do need everybody on board to make it happen.
I'm just thinking of the feedback I've been picking up is it's very much a people journey with your staff and users, but often it might be a business case selling situation, either more efficient and effective or less costly.
Yeah.
But I've seen situations where a business model, this is how we have to do it to be like the big boys, and then they forget the people.
Yeah. Do you want to? I'll let you answer it, and I'm going to ask Heather to answer it as well.
One of the things that I didn't say earlier on was what was driving any of the changes that we had was how do we allow the work that we do to actually reach more into the community? How do we get time with people? Because one of the things we were finding was that all the time that our workers had was being driven by these systems. And actually what we were finding is we were getting further and further away from working with people to working with systems. So part of the changeover for us in terms of actually making a more digital kind of environment in the workplace was actually to allow them to spend more time in the field doing what they should be doing, which is working with people and talking to people and finding out what people really need and want, not what we think they want, and not mirroring big companies, because that should be the thing we should do.
Heather, can I get you to, what's your take on that?
Well, I think, as I said, one of the things driving us was the fact that we had to make some sort of change because our existing system, which didn't suit our needs, but was going to change so dramatically, we needed to invest, and it was very much about an investment decision that started our process. So I suppose the early stage was a bit about gathering the information on costs and making that business case to the board for not just renewing what we had and sticking with it, which would have ultimately probably been about £20,000, £25,000 cheaper. But it would still have involved the pain of a new system interface and rolling out mobile technology. So I think we thought that our people were going to suffer some pain anyway, regardless. I think what Elliot said about, with hindsight, there would have been a bit more of involving different users in the options appraisal process, but we did find ourselves pushed a little bit by timescale as well. Our system that we had, some other very key important part, was becoming unsupported within about a kind of 6 to 9 month timescale. So actually we had to do something. So it was driven by business need rather than an organic, let's all talk about where we are and how we move forward. And in an ideal world it wouldn't have been, but we work with about 8,000 to 10,000 people a year. So we've got 8, and that's kind of individual counselling clients mainly. So and there's a lot of information storage required. So you're doing up to 6 or 8 appointments with each of those people, maybe several times in the year. So we needed to store the data, we needed to store it securely. So it was really driven by business decisions, and the board were very supportive because they could see the clear business reasons for it. But had we had a bit more time and a luxury of not having a deadline hanging over our head, it would have been better to have a far more collaborative process. Even just to get the information out there, like, at this stage of the game, you wouldn't change to a system that didn't involve mobile, because we needed to manage, we were hiring storage containers to store our paper files, and just ludicrous. But we had to keep client files for 5 years, after the end of the engagement. So there's all this stuff around information storage and management that you have to deal with. So it was business need that drove our decision. We'd like it to have been people-led, but I'm afraid we didn't have the luxury of that.
Who remembers keeping files in boxes? That's the thing. Who just still does that? Oh my God. I know exactly. There's a couple of folk going, oh yes, I know exactly. I mean, well, we don't have a hot desk system downstairs, and we've all got lockers, and most of us sit with piles of paper on our desks. Like, there's nowhere to put anything. Oh my God, drives us up the wall. Anyway, any more questions? Thank you, both of you. Ali, you were going to say something?
I was just going to
Sorry, Alex.
The way we do it, and whether it's right or wrong, we have a success group, that we call it. It's a user group made up of about 10% of the company. So we're 100 staff, so there's 10 staff on it. And they're across different teams and different locations with totally different job roles. And I don't involve it, it's one of my colleagues who runs it, so it's not IT heavy, it's just one person from us. And they meet quarterly, and we make it kind of fun. So there's donuts, and then we occasionally get stuff on them, like sunglasses and others, to make it light. And they kind of map out what they do, and they can talk about the problems that they've got. And there's a lot of things that have come from that we wouldn't even thought of. So things like the quality of data, the amount of duplicates that were existing, that was a big problem. And we kind of knew it was there, but we hadn't realised it was such a roadblock to some of the things that they were doing. So, and when we developed our training courses, the material that we were going to use, the way we were going to deliver it, the time commitments they could do, it was those people that informed it, and it works quite well. And then we have to kind of help that a bit if we want to if it's a request for something new, that we have to escalate up to our FD and then our VAR committee and then our board. We have to enable that. But in terms of what we do and the kind of direction, they really help inform that. And then the flip side of that is that without even really having to tell them, they act as ambassadors for it. They work as super users and trainers themselves and really promote it within their teams. It works.
It does. Can vouch for that, it does work. Anybody else? Alex, you were going to, yep.
Alex, I work for local opportunities for older people in Edinburgh. The question is for Heather, actually. Bear in mind that you don't have an IT department. What criteria did you use to choose your IT partner who did the development work?
It was very much about how much we felt they got us, because we were very honest with I think we whittled it down to 3 companies in the end that we were getting firmed up proposals from, and it was about largely how they engaged with us. There wasn't much to pick and choose in terms of cost, so it wasn't that we were really driven to go with the cheapest. It was about, I suppose, the conversations they had with us, how we felt in the room with them when they were doing the presentations, how they responded to questions we were asking, which were stupid questions by and large, but you know, when you're not a completely IT savvy company, you're going to ask stupid questions. If you feel that you're not being listened to or you're being dismissed a wee bit in that respect, it doesn't really give you confidence that relationship that you need. And we'd said to all the providers, we're really going to need help to map our business processes here, because we haven't done that in the way it needs to be done to get an IT system to follow that and to support that. And all of the providers said they would build in support to do that. One of them was a bit dismissive of it and said, well, yeah, you know, process analysis is part of the, and I was saying, yeah, but it's not about analysing that process, it's about helping us actually state it and define it. Because there are things that we will do now that we don't want to do in future. So we don't want to say, this is what we do and this is how we do it, and you just build something around that, and then 2 years down the line, go, this doesn't work for us, and you go, well, that's what you asked for. We need you to question us and challenge us and say, well, why would you do it that way? Isn't it easier to do it this way? So one of them was a bit like, yeah, that's just part of the deal, and really glossed over it and didn't really engage with it. The other 2 both said, yeah, we will work with you quite closely to do that. But the company we ended up going with, I think, went a bit further, and were saying, yeah, we totally understand that you're a people business. You're not a tech business. You're not an IT business. Your outcomes for your business are about helping people recover or move forward or change their lives. They're not about how many buttons you press and how great your gadgets are. So they kind of really got it. They've been pretty good, but the relationship has not been without strain. A lot of that is about still not talking each other's language sometimes. So, you know, when you know, it's that whole, what is your requirement? Well, we kind of think we need to do that, but we're not really sure if we want to do it that way or we want to do it that way, or how would it work? How would it work if it happened that way? And you can see them going, really? You know?
And are
So
they
there's a lot.
local to you, or?
Yeah, they're in Glasgow.
They are.
And that probably was one of the other factors. One of the other companies was pretty close, but they were in Hertfordshire or somewhere. And although this is a digital world and you can be in the room on the screen and all the rest of it, there's just a wee bit of comfort in knowing that physically that company and its team are there, and they, without putting too fine a point on it, won't have to translate when we get excited and speak really fast in our Glasgow accents and go, so just what were you saying, slow down? There was a wee bit of that in conversations. Like, okay, I think you said this, and it's like, really? Get a grip. So there was kind of comfort stuff going on there as well.
I think that's quite an important point, Heather. It's about you handing over all this money to something and you don't know who they are or what they're going to do, or they speak a different language. It's pretty daunting sometimes. And being able to have that, you wouldn't do that you wouldn't get a mortgage with a bank that you thought, oh no, I don't trust you. So that it's the same, that kind of analogy of actually trusting that organisation. You're going to have to work really closely with them. So actually taking that time to pick them, and to feel that, oh, they get us. It's great, they get us, absolutely. Any last questions before I move us into the? Oh yes, we've got 2 more. Go for it. Go.
I work with. I'm not sure who this is directed at. I work with very small charities, often just volunteer-led, and they work with overseas partners. So for them, moving to the cloud is ideal, but they're often retired and at that age where it's just maybe a little bit more challenging. I'm just wondering, is there somewhere to go for a comparison of cloud service providers? Where would I find what is offered by who? That I can.
So that's maybe you, is it?
Point.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously
I know, because
productivity tools, and then there's CRMs, and then there's all sorts of stuff. There are some resources down south. Some of there's a couple of there are some websites with some comparisons. I think, Maddie, you probably know more about it, to be honest. But well, why don't Maddie and I commit to posting up some resources at the end of this, and what we can find we'll put up, and all the rest of it.
Like really small.
Well, what specifically? Was it the productivity stuff?
Yeah,
like?
I think that's a really big question you've just asked us. That's why we're both going, wow.
I mean, it really is literally usually file sharing.
Okay.
Smaller things they can share and interact with each other in other countries and all over here. And it's just, how do they choose what they're going to use for that?
You can kind of, that's partly one of the reasons why you moved to what you're doing, isn't it? So
I mean, otherwise I would recommend like Google that, Google.
I mean, for me, our choice of going with Google was kind of in that territory. It was once we'd signed up through Google Not-for-Profits, got through and it wasn't that hard, I should also say, in terms of you provide your charity number, they check it, they come back to you. Within a couple of hours, we were done, and we were able then to initiate actually starting up and setting up G Suite. Then moving on to kind of stuff around domain and setting up email. So it actually wasn't that tricky in tech terms, but also the ability to access and share all the documentation aspect was really good and easy. And I should also say at this point, free.
Does help. Ali, go
A
for it.
lot of these programs in the UK, they're managed on behalf of people by TechSoup, locally, but in the UK it's the Charities Technology Trust, or Charities Technology Exchange, I think they're called now. So if you go to their website, so for Office 365 and for the G Suite stuff that Elliot's got, there where you get your token from your TechSoup token that enables you to get that drawdown on that voucher. So there are some resources on there as well too. They probably won't say one's better than the other. Charities Technology Trust, search that, but again we'll share those resources there.
Another question? Final question?
Having moved off the 365 and same sort of issues that we have.
Okay.
But for those of you who have moved to cloud-based organisations, I'm wondering, has that allowed you to do away with your what's probably the most costly item in the office, which is the physical server? Or do you find now that you have to, now you're paying for a cloud service and you're still having to retain your server? And if you still are you hoping that at some time in the future you'd like to get rid of that?
On the 31st of March, the server will go unplugged and covered.
Dun,
Never to
dun,
come
dun.
out again.
We'll all be there watching you unplug it, see what happens.
Plan. But I was saying, Ali, earlier on, we still do physical backup as well. So, unfortunately, if you move to cloud, you are absolutely reliant on that internet connection. And if there is stuff in your business in terms of when you do a risk analysis that you would need continual access to, you have to contemplate that at some point your internet connection will go down. We have systems that are based on cloud-based data systems, and they do go down, and then we cannot access, say, our volunteering opportunities because they're hosted online. So there are issues with either system, but I would certainly say I have more trust in a cloud-based system than I do in a physical server sitting in my office.
Ali, do you want to?
Not completely. We reduced from about 14 down to 5 now. Across
That's
the
quite
site.
significant though, 14 to 5.
Yeah, so what they do still is there's a couple of bits of software, so we have a payroll bureau, that's still, there's not a cloud version of that that's good enough for us to use at the moment, so we still have to do that on, and we still have some archive stuff. We also use it for authentication for users, for logging in and things. That will probably, all 3 of those, and our HR database, actually all 4 of those will probably move at some point over, but we're not spending the money that we were spending on servers. We're much lighter weight devices now, so we would maybe like a 6,000, I mean, the costs have come down anyway, but £6,000 server is now maybe like a £1,400 server replacement. But it's not necessarily always the money as well too, it's about the speed at which we can provision things, and that whole business continuity disaster thing as well too, and being able to access the data from anywhere easily is important too.
One of the things, Ali, that you said that actually resonated with me was how much your job had changed from being very reactionary, so coming in on Monday and going, right, what are we doing now, to actually getting out there, training staff, giving the presentations and doing more of a, I would call it consultancy, but that kind of general speaking to people and giving advice and stuff. That IT, head of IT role has changed because of us moving to the cloud, and that aspect of it. Is it completely different? Is there still aspects the same?
Yeah, my job's very different from what I did.
Yeah.
And it's different stuff. I mean, the software, the services that we're using, even they radically different from 5 years ago and things. I mean, we haven't had email on premise. We used to have email, spams, filtering, Blackberries we were using back in the day, Blackberry Enterprise.
Oh, what?
Blackberries. So all of that stuff we don't do anymore. That's all fairly simple.
Yeah.
Going through a website, you manage it through a website, you maybe have to do a little bit of this PowerShell stuff to do some things, but it's much simpler. So that kind of headache's moved. So what you can do now is we spend our time, hopefully, bringing efficiencies, making people do their jobs quicker into other parts of the business rather than having to spend our time just breaking stuff fixing stuff that breaks.
Other way around. Thank you. Thanks very much, Ali. Any final questions before I say goodbye to the live stream, and thanks very much. Anything else? Oh, Alex, go for it.
In terms of storage, I mean, I think that's the great thing about going to the cloud is that your storage is unlimited. So if you are an organisation which has reams and reams and reams of terabytes worth of data, you're never going to run out of storage. And we found our local stuff was clogging up, and so our emails stopped working, or our emails were going out every now and again, but nobody realised for a couple of days, I think, and it was our storage, our local storage was bunged up. So we all had to start deleting stuff.
That's quite interesting. Yeah, definitely.
So storage is fantastic.
Apparently, on average, we all keep about 8,000 emails in our email system as individuals. That's quite a lot, all filed away. Go.
Hi, I'm the Equality Network, so we're looking at getting a CRM database. We're only a very small team, and it's very daunting, the process mapping and getting, what do we actually need? What kind of help is there for that? Is there other people out there that can come in and help us with what we need before we then go to different CRMs?
Heather, I think that's one for you.
You're much bigger than, that's not what we want. We don't need all the bells and whistles and things like that. We just basically want kind of information out there. Everybody keeps it in different things. We want it all in one centre.
Yeah. I mean, we did get support with the requirements gathering and process mapping was more once we'd chosen what we were going to do, but in terms of even stating what your requirement is, that's quite difficult because you don't talk the language, you don't know what you need to consider. And our IT support company, so we managed to get a little bit of money, I think, from Scottish Enterprise. And there's quite a lot of digital projects around that will let you apply for just a couple of £1,000 to get a couple of days of few days of somebody's time.
to sit with your team and to have a representative of each function, if you like, of your business, and actually say, so what do you do on a daily basis? So what do you need to keep? What do you need to store? What do you need to share? What do you need at your fingertips? And they just ask the questions that help then define what your requirements are. So, you know, there's usually forms of grant that you can get to pay somebody. And most IT support tech companies will offer that service.
You might be able to get something from Business Gateway.
Yeah.
They do a distribution program, so you might be able to get a couple of days of consultancy for free through.
Yeah, the digital boost is just going on just now, which I think is about giving you access to consultants that will do those kind of functions. So it's not always about trying to get money for it. There's resources there.
I would also suggest that you speak to our head of IT, who is very knowledgeable in a lot of these things as well.
You can normally as well too. There are people that do it pro bono as well too. So two big CRMs, Dynamics and Salesforce. You go into Microsoft or you go into Salesforce's community websites, you'll see ways through their foundations of drawing down on that one. I think I find it much easier to get somebody to come and do that than get somebody to come and build it pro bono. But you might be able to get that help. And a lot of the big standard mics and people like that, they use these cloud CRMs. So getting a couple of days through their volunteering program for one of their staff might be another way of doing it too.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Oh. So was that another question? All right, no?
It's the same question, but and I suppose having tried to go that way, I've not been very successful so far. So certainly want to widen the net a bit.
Try everybody, try them all.
There are more for all these various things. There's not one kind of big cloud. For all these various things, there are more user groups popping up, and they're happy for nonprofits to go. And just don't feel that because you're a charity or nonprofit, you can't go into these things and join them. There are lots on Meetup, lots out there. It's on its website too, so you can go and join these, and specifically focused on specific areas like productivity or CRM.
I would definitely say, Ali's almost taking the words out of my mouth. There's a lot of meetups out there who are run by professionals, a lot of freelancers, and certainly in what's happened to me is when I've gone along and said I work for a charity, they're absolutely overjoyed. Oh, you are? Oh, great! This is what we need. We need somebody new. They want to share their expertise and their knowledge, and they want to kind of get it out there. So it's worth spending time with a cup of tea, going through that Meetup platform, going through Eventbrite, seeing what's happening, and a lot of them, if not 90% of these things, are free to go to, and that's where you're going to meet the right person that's going to say, do you know what, I'll come in 2 hours, have a chat with you, speak to you about that. And a lot of that information is there, and it is readily available. My colleague Ailey and I do spend probably about once a month sitting there with a cup of tea, doing our best to go through a lot of these things. But again, it's so that you don't have to, so we can then say, oh, go to this event, go to that event. But again, if you're doing it and if you know what it is that you want, it is worth it just sitting down and saying, right, what is it? There's all kinds of groups out there that will do it. The one that I went to was a WordPress one, and that's full of WordPress experts who would happily have built somebody a website there and then in that 2 hours for free of charge, because they just wanted to share all their knowledge. So they're definitely out there. It's just taking that time just to get over that hurdle of banging your head against a brick wall and think, right, how else can I do it? When it's not your priority, because your priority is running your service and getting out there and working with the people. So it always tends to take a back seat. So it's back to that. Just investing that time initially will then have the benefits, have all the rewards. And on that positive note, I shall close that part. That will be our live streaming will be over, so thank you very much to our speakers. What we're going to do now, we've got just about half an hour left, so I'm going to move us over to the tables, and we'll just do a kind of a retrospective. So please grab another. I think we've got coffee, more coffee there. Thanks, Kyle. Thanks very much. Help yourself to coffee, final biscuits, and I'll get you just to go and sit into small groups at the tables. That would be great. Thank you very much.